Hello, it's Dwayne here. I wanted to talk to you today about being a big fan of WWE wrestling. And I noticed that Dave Meltzer, a wrestling mark and so-called journalist, likes to rate his favorite matches on a 5-star scale. Now, I'm a different kind of fan than him, and there's many matches that I thought deserved to be 5 stars. And I think he was wrong on some things. Dave Meltzer's a mark. He likes a particular wrestling style, but it isn't as good as he makes it out to be. Here's 10 WWE matches from the Attitude Era that I thought deserved 5 stars. First, and these are in no particular order, by the way. The first one I want to talk about is the 2 out of 3 falls match for the Intercontinental title between The Rock and Triple H at Fully Loaded in 1998. I thought that was better than the match Triple H and The Rock had at SummerSlam a month later. It was very good. It had outside interference behind the referee's back. It went a full 30 minutes, and it was very good. One of the best matches of 1998, in my opinion. An all-time classic. It was good enough in my mind to get 5 stars. You had The Rock, who's a huge star. You have Triple H, a future star at that point. You had interference between the Nation and DX. Throughout the match, it was a crazy match. It was wild. It was everything you'd want in a wrestling match and should have got 5 stars. The next one I want to talk about is the TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17. The Dudleys versus Edge and Christian versus the Hardys. It was one of the greatest matches in WWE history. A really great match. Very violent, lots of high risks. People falling off of ladders. You had Edge spearing somebody off a ladder. You had people going through tables and getting hit with chairs. It was an amazing, violent car crash of a match. It was very good and deserved a full 5 stars. And I would have given it 5 stars if I were using that star system. That was one of the greatest matches at the tail end of the Attitude Era. Very entertaining and very good. Another one I want to talk about, it's the 2 out of 3 falls, 3 stages of hell match a month earlier between Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin at the No Way Out 2001 pay-per-view. Great match. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H fought a violent match. There was a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire. Very violent. The first match was a traditional wrestling match that Steve Austin surprisingly won. People thought that kind of match would favor Triple H. And that's the storyline going into the match, but they surprised everybody by having Austin win the first fall. The second fall was a no-holds-barred type match. Very violent, lots of weapons. Then ending in a really entertaining cage match where both people fell on top of each other with Triple H winning, pinning Steve Austin. It was a great match. Very entertaining. None of the matches today are that good. All these marks that say today's in-ring product is better than it was then, they don't know what they're talking about. That was one of the greatest matches of all time, and you'll never see a match that good today. Another one I want to talk about is the Triple H versus Cactus Jack at Royal Rumble 2000 Street Fight. Awesome match. Again, one of the greatest matches of all time. You'll never find a match that good today. Very violent. You had the first time a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire, I believe, was even used in WWE. You had lots of blood. You had the use of the announce table. You had trash cans. You had Triple H being backdropped on a wood pallet, legitimately cutting his heel. You had, or ankle area. You had lots of violence, lots of blood. You had Triple H handcuffing Mick Foley, trying to replicate the spot at the end of the 99 Royal Rumble with The Rock interfering. You had thumbtacks, 2 different falls on the thumbtacks for Mick Foley, including face first to end the match. Again, one of the greatest matches today, and no wrestler today, no matter how good they are, is going to have a match like that. No indie wrestlers are going to have a match that good, and none of the Japanese New Japan wrestlers are going to have that good a match. It was an instant classic, one of the greatest of all times. In the next month, at No Way Out 2000, there was a Hell in a Cell match between Mick Foley and Triple H, better than the Mankind Undertaker Hell in a Cell match. The Cactus Jack Triple H match was all around a better match. You had fighting inside the cell, large amounts of it, the use of the steel stairs being thrown at Mick Foley. You had Mick Foley going face first into a chair in the ring, getting hit in the back with the chair. Mick Foley jumping off the second rope onto Triple H outside the ring with the chair. You had Triple H being thrown into the cell. Multiple spots into the cell being used as a weapon. Then they fought outside the cell. You had a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire again being used. Triple H then got a hold of it on top of the cell. Mick Foley did a safer spot off the cell the second time around. It was a lot safer than the first fall, where The Undertaker just threw Mankind with full force. This one was similar to the Shawn Michaels fall, where Triple H attacked Mick Foley. He was holding onto the side of the cell and fell off. Then they did a safer spot through the cell where the ring collapsed. After the 2x4 and barbed wire was lit on fire, you then saw a pedigree for the win. Again, the greatest Hell in a Cell match Mick Foley ever did, and one of the greatest matches of his career. Another match I want to talk about is the Edge and Christian versus the Hardys, the Terry Invitational Tournament Finals ladder match at No Mercy, 1999. That was a very great match. They took brutal bumps, falls off the ladder, throwing the ladder at each other, crazy stuff you haven't really seen in a ladder match before, and it was only a preview of better things to come. It was a great match and was a classic. I also want to discuss Stone Cold versus The Rock at the 1999 Backlash pay-per-view. The first Backlash, better than the WrestleMania 15 match, my personal favorite Rock versus Austin match. They fought hard outside the ring, destroyed the set. You had The Rock taking the camera and taunting Austin, very entertaining. Steve Austin throwing up the middle finger and attacking The Rock. It was entertaining. It was everything you'd want from a match between two stars of that caliber. And again, it was a good match. You didn't have to have Austin diving through the ropes or doing a 450 or a springboard moonsault. He didn't have to do all that to have a good match. I don't know, maybe some of today's Mark fans might chant boring. I thought that was entertaining and better than anything in the WWE product today. Excellent match. Then the match at WrestleMania 17, the main event of one of the greatest WrestleManias, probably the greatest WrestleMania of all time. That was an excellent match. It was a little more violent. You had some blood. You had The Rock and Steve Austin kicking out of each other's finishes and performing each other's finishes. One of the first times stuff like that happened. You had the surprise heel turn by Austin at the end of the match with Vince McMahon. You had a really good classic match. Pretty violent, very good match, perfect end to the last WrestleMania of the Attitude Era. Also, I'd like to talk about The Rock versus Mankind in a ladder match on Raw in 1999. I don't know the exact date. It was sometime in February. And they had an excellent ladder match. Not a single commercial break during that match on Raw. Nowadays, you can't hardly get a match on Raw without a commercial break. And Vince Russo did a fantastic job writing that show. They took the last commercial break before the match even started, and you got to see the whole thing. Something WWE could learn from and do today. The fact is, they got that whole match, no commercial breaks, very entertaining. They fought through the crowd. Not even necessary in the ladder match, but it added to the match and made it even better. Then you set up the WrestleMania match between Foley and The Big Show by The Big Show's interference, and set up Rock versus Austin. You had the corporate champ in The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin going to win his title back from the hand-picked corporate champion, Vince McMahon's hand-picked champion, which fed into that storyline really well. Another match that I thought was excellent was the main event of the 1998 Survivor Series, one of the greatest pay-per-views WWE ever put on, and the greatest Survivor Series of all time. The main event match, you had a storyline going into that match. It was excellent. You had constant interference by the corporation, and what people thought was the corporation trying to stop The Rock from winning the title. and it backfired on him every time. Most fans wouldn't have known it was intentional in the storyline. You had Austin getting screwed over by Shane McMahon turning back heel, and then you had Mankind going into the main event with people thinking he was McMahon's handpicked champion. The ref, even though it wasn't meant to be no holds barred, it especially was. It was violent. You had the use of chairs and steel stairs. You had weapons use. Of course, the referee wasn't going to do a DQ in that match, which fed into the storyline and made for an even better match. You had crazy table spots with the announce tables, Mick Foley putting himself through an announce table, and then they reenacted the Montreal Screwjob a year after it happened. And an excellent main event. The storyline that came out of that main event was one of the greatest of all times, one of the greatest swerves of all time, second only to the Hogan heel turn at Bash at the Beach in 1996. You had The Rock with the sharpshooter, the exact move that the screw job happened with Vince doing it again, and the crowd left happy because Austin came back to get his revenge and get a few stunners in, even stunning Mankind, who was at that point a babyface. But Austin could do it and still get over with the crowd, with the shades of gray kind of babyface. So those were the excellent matches. Those matches deserved 5 stars. Those matches are better than anything done in New Japan, on the Indies, NXT, or WWE today. And the marks are going to disagree with me, but I know they're wrong. And I know the WWE can't keep catering to those kind of fans. Alright, that's my take on that. Alright, thank you.